Welcome, everyone. You're listening to Nephology, the podcast dedicated to crypto, accounting, business, finance, and much, much more. I'm Joe David, the founder of Nephos Group in Myna. Please note that all conversations recorded are professional opinions, and if you'd like to know more or gain support, please reach out to the team directly. Now on to the next episode.
Hello and welcome to part one of the DeFi mini-series. I am Tom, the DeFi accounting specialist, and I am joined today with Bryan from Swapsicle. Bryan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, how's it going, Tom? My name is Bryan Karraker. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Swapsicle DEX, and pleasure to be on with you today.
Awesome. So for those of you who don't know, Bryan is very much a DeFi whiz, and today we're going to be kicking off the series by talking about all things DeFi, mainly around decentralized exchanges and a few other areas. And just talking about what's happened recently and where we think the future is going to go. So I guess we'll kick off, Bryan, with a bit of a simpler one for our viewers who aren't familiar. What is a decentralized exchange? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question to start with. So the best way I like to describe a decentralized exchange is, for those familiar with traditional finance and things like that, you have trading platforms like Fidelity, E-Trade, things of that nature, maybe even centralized exchanges in crypto that people understand, like Binance, Coinbase, Kraken. What a decentralized exchange basically is a community-owned exchange. The users supply the liquidity that can be traded through the different assets. The users earn the rewards. And one of the main things, and definitely one of the most important things in decentralized finance, is that the user is always in control of their assets, whether that's through a MetaMask wallet, a Ledger hardware wallet, things like that. It's just really important that users understand that when you interact with decentralized platforms, what you're actually doing is approving smart contracts that have code already hard based in, that you're basically just asking for permission and then giving it through signing, through your wallet and things like that.
Awesome. So I think obviously the whole premise of decentralized finance is something that I've always been very passionate about. It's something I've always believed in. And obviously with the recent events of FTX and, more recently SVB, it shows that there's a massive importance for decentralized finance and for, the everyday person to have control of their own finances, because, at the end of the day, we don't know what these large centralized corporations are doing with the money. So that's why it's such an important, thing, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, I think you can say transparency this, transparency that, but it doesn't get any more transparent than owning your own funds, verifying them on a blockchain. It all just depends how in depth you want to be in DeFi and how much control you do want over your finances, over your assets, things like that. But I really do think that the more people begin to understand decentralized finance, I think right now it sort of sounds like not a big word, but maybe not registers in everyone's vocabulary right now, if you will. Um, the basis in the premise of decentralized finance is to give power back to the people, if you will. Use that kind of saying that you take control of your finances, you take control of the decisions, and ultimately that comes with responsibility of your private keys and things of that nature. So there's definitely things that users need to understand when it comes to decentralized finance, but and maybe I'm a little biased being involved in it, but I definitely think it is the future, and how people will view their finances moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the key things that, you advocate is all about education and helping people to understand how to get into this space and making the process as easy as possible. So obviously some of the things that you guys have done to help make this process easier is obviously implementing an on-ramp so that people can easily on-ramp their funds onto the platform and use it, tutorials, Q&A sessions, all of those kinds of things to help people really understand what it is they're getting into. But something more recently that I've heard about you guys doing, I think you'd be quite keen to talk about to really help enhance that DeFi experience and make it easier for people to get into the space. Do you mind sharing what that is?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few different things that we're doing as far as educational content. We have our docs page that kind of lays everything out. But what we're really working towards is that sort of ease of use for the everyday user. I talk to people all the time, and it reminds me of the early days of the internet when people didn't really, what is an at symbol? What is this email address? Like, I don't understand what that is. So I think we're sort of at that stage when it comes to Web3 and decentralized finances. People are just kind of dipping their toes in, and there's definitely things that we can improve upon. Um, but I think we're now starting to get to that next layer of how do you get to the masses and how help people understand this an easy to use platform. I don't, the average person doesn't have 5 hours a day to be learning about decentralized finance and things like that. It's kind of a show me the money. How do I do this? How do I navigate this space in sort of a I hate using the word centralized, but in an area that I can do it all from one place. So the Swapsicle Foundation itself will be releasing in the next quarter or so a platform called Stratify, which kind of looks to aggregate strategies. Users can build strategies. You can follow strategies that other users have created and earn commission that way by sharing the strategies. Um, and I think what it'll allow is people to kind of dip their toe into DeFi without having to have 5 different browsers open and understand all the complexities. They can sort of see the risk that they're taking, understand what the strategy is that it's doing, but then also be able to enter that and participate in DeFi with one click of a button.
Yeah, I mean, what more could somebody, the everyday person, ask for more than that? I mean, me personally, like I've invested and participated in a huge range of different DeFi products, and admittedly, some of them you don't always necessarily look into the backbone of it. What is the project actually about? All I see is this massive APY, and I think, yeah, brilliant. Like, I want a piece of that. And I think what you guys are building will really help to make that process safer.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point as well, is that, back in the 2017, well, DeFi wasn't really around then, but sort of the 2019, 2020 bull run that Bitcoin saw, you really saw people just hunting those APRs and the APYs and, not really understanding, is there real yield behind this? Is there anything behind this? What is this other than just, new technology and sort of the tulip, balloon the boom. And a lot of people could say the same thing about the internet. In the early days of the internet, there was sort of what was referred to as the .com bubble, where if you just made a website, threw up some pictures, people would come to your website and they would order things. And unfortunately, some didn't show. Those products didn't show up to your front door. So I think that's sort of the stage we're moving out of now. More ease of use, more innovation will be coming into the space to really get people to understand what this is all about. Because I think it's easy to say that the internet had a little impact on the everyday person's life, and I think this as a whole has the potential to have people understand about their finances maybe a little better. I know obviously in accounting it's important for people. You guys handle that for people, but you also make sure that those people understand how important it is to be on top of your taxes, to be on top of managing budgets and things like that. And I think that this will just be that next step of giving people a little insight maybe to what some refer to just as Wall Street, right? Oh,
Yeah.
well, Wall Street did this or Wall Street does that, but nobody really understands the inner workings. And I think DeFi is sort of breaking that down for the average person to say, hey, you can earn off of doing this now. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, no, definitely, completely agree. There are so many different things you can invest in DeFi as well. Like you can stake your tokens, you can enter liquidity pools and provide liquidity for trades. You can set up validator nodes and help support those networks. Something of which that Swapsicle's done. So, I mean, I've never set up a validator node, and it's something I'd like to look into. But if somebody wanted to help participate in a network, how would they go around doing that?
So yeah, I mean, it sort of depends on which network you're looking to support. A lot of them do them on chain, depending upon how in depth we want to get into this conversation, things like the Avalanche network that we launched on and support. There's actually two different chains. One, deals with transactions. The other deals with the security of the network. So you kind of got to go from the C chain to the P chain. But what's really interesting and I think really cool is that Avalanche just partnered with AWS to help bring node creation even easier for people now. And I think that just ties back into what we were just talking about of, you know, the crypto space, Web3 space is really starting to be primed to bring in one-click functions and be able to create nodes and validate things and actually be a participant of the network. Because like you said, I mean, most people in the 2019, 2020 run, it was just, hey, look at this APR. And now that everybody saw that that was sort of a house of cards way of looking at things, now they're saying, okay, how do I actually participate in these networks? Oh, I can do things like file sharing, and I can rent out my CPU, and there's so many different angles of things that you can do to participate, NFTs and ticket sales, and there's so many things floating around in the space that I really think, just like the internet, people are going to start to find their niche and want to dive in a little deeper.
Yeah, no, exactly. I completely agree. I've always been a bit of an Avalanche maxi, so I always like hearing about the AWS stuff. They announced a big esports partnership the other day, so I've always got a soft spot for Avalanche, always. But obviously, the approach you guys have taken is to become more of a omni-chain DEX. You want to make sure that everybody can use your platform, not just be secluded to one network. So why don't you talk about a bit more about the networks that you've started to support and why you've decided to do this?
Yeah, so I mean, we obviously launched on Avalanche. Again, we love their transaction speed, the low cost of the gas, because I think we always saw that as sort of a pain point for a lot of DeFi users dealing on Ethereum. Ethereum really was the original DeFi chain, and I think it started to, obviously they switched to Ethereum 2.0 with proof of stake and things like that. So they started making adjustments on their end to sort of keep up with the space of the new kids on the block. And Avalanche, I wouldn't necessarily say there's such a new kid on the block, but they were newer in the space. And again, they're just building upon what they saw come before them. The same way, we had Napster, then we had LimeWire, then we had Apple Music, Spotify. That whole progression of technology, I think we're just kind of seeing that play over again. One of the chains that we actually just launched on and that we partnered with is the Telos Foundation, a chain that we really are excited about, that we see huge potential in. They're a community that have been around for, I think, about 4 or 5 years. But what they're really starting to do now is get into the DeFi space a little more. When they launched their Telos native. And it is a little more difficult for users to onboard through something that requires a little more in-depth research. They deal with things like CPU and RAM and different things like that. So it's not an easy transition to, say another EVM chain.
Yeah.
For those that don't know what an EVM chain is, it's Ethereum's virtual machine, which a lot of the existing chains in DeFi have already been built on. Now Telos is EVM compatible, and they're really making a push to become a player in the DeFi space. And we're just so excited to be a part of that, to help them grow. They've got a great community that is super engaging. They treated us beyond what we could ever hope to have with a chain partner, because we see that they have a vision and they want to kind of run with this and bring education and other people into the space.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the main things I love about the crypto industry. Like, as soon as I came in, it felt like everybody's just a big family. Everyone's here to support each other, everyone's here to help, advice, anything. Like, there's always a helping hand. And that's what these partnerships are all about. It's all about helping each other grow, helping each other go to the next level. And especially with how, doom and gloom the crypto industry can be at times, it's really important to have that network around you. And that's why I'm really grateful to have half of the connections I do have, because I know I can reach out to any of them. So yeah, no, that's really good to hear on that partnership. So in terms of next steps then, where do you see the next 12 months going, not just for you as a project, but also for perhaps the industry as a whole?
It's funny that I'm going to say this because I am kind of a decentralized degen. I really like the privacy aspect, but I also understand that regulation is needed.
Yeah.
Um, I can't play Batman and Robin and hunt down all the bad actors by myself. You need to have institution, power behind you that's going to go hunt down the bad actors. What I just hope doesn't happen is that they come in and just want to take over the space and sort of look over the good actors that are doing things good in this space. I want to work with them. Swapsicle is also obviously also a part of Crypto UK, which is a kind of a regulatory advisory board that kind of meets and discusses policy that may be coming up. So I hope that they do take that into consideration when making laws. I can't guarantee anything. Obviously, I am a big, you know, liberty, freedom type person, but I also understand that we can't have money laundering and things like that happen. So I hope that we can find sort of a common ground where, they don't take DeFi out at the kneecaps, but they say, okay, if you are a real player in this space, you need to follow these steps. And I just hope they're not ridiculous steps that, like I said, kneecaps the entire space.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the things that I'm keeping a close eye on. I mean, obviously, for accountants, it's a huge thing, especially considering we deal with crypto clients. It's something we always need to keep an eye on. And the UK is looking to try and become the crypto hub, and fingers crossed that does come to fruition, and we do like lead the charge on crypto harmony. So yeah, the next 12 months are definitely going to be interesting. Obviously, with all of the fallouts over the last 6 to 12 months, I don't think we're anyone's biggest fan, anyone in the crypto industry. So, yeah, it's time will tell. But one of the things specifically in this area, I don't know if you've got an opinion on this, Bryan, but what do you think about CBDCs?
I have mixed feelings. Again, mainly against them because I think that it gives too much power to a centralized authority, right? So when you're talking about the central banks, that word is kind of thrown around, but we don't realize central is first for a reason. It is very centralized. It is very controlled by a limited number of people. You don't vote on what your central bank is doing. These are elected officials that then kind of work their way through the system. And we all know how the system works, right? I hire you, you do this favor for me, and it's that whole game. And I think what DeFi really brought back was a little bit of power to the people. You look at things like DAOs, you look at where it's true democracy that the majority votes for this stuff and it gets passed. There is no favors being done. There are no back end deals being cut. It's all transparent, it's all on chain. And that's one of my concerns. Now, I'm also a realist in the fact that I know that the government's not just going to give up control tomorrow. They'll
Yeah,
roll tanks through the country before they just allow Tom and Bryan to take over financial decision making as far as all that goes. So I hope it's not a bloody battle. I hope it's not us versus them. I hope that we can find some common ground. Um, Unfortunately, the way that things have been going lately, it just seems, whether it's coincidental, but they seem to be going after crypto pretty hard right now, which I was okay with in the beginning because they were going after the bad actors. But now it almost seems like they want to take everyone out. And I just think that this is sort of a movement like the internet that's not just going to go away because a bunch of people in suits got together and said it needs to be this way. I think it's definitely a movement that people stand behind, feel very strongly about, and they want control of their finances. And I think having the CBDCs, I think things could be a little more transparent, but they could also turn dystopian really fast. So just being able to see both sides of the coin, um, is it a false protection? I guess is what I'm trying to say. They'll come in and say, oh, it's backed by the Fed, it's this and that,
yeah,
but is that the show and pony horse that they're putting on? But meanwhile, in the back end, it just means that it's more centralized control.
yeah, exactly. I think, especially in the UK, because the UK has been pushing quite hard on their CBDC policy and how they want to implement it and move forward. And like you were saying about the whole matter of control and being in control of your own finances, one of the things that they said that they were going to do was put a cap on how many CBDCs you could hold. So I think that if I remember rightly, in the UK it was about £20,000 per household, and it's like, well, that doesn't really make sense. Like, you're putting a cap on how much we can hold of it. How is that giving us freedom?
Well, there's two things on that. I think it's funny that when it first rolled out, everybody started calling it Britcoin, and they got all up in arms. That's not Britcoin, blah blah blah. But the name just fits so perfect with Bitcoin. But no, I think that's a real concern. I mean, what people don't understand, and maybe this is good for your viewers, that we're so in this space, we understand what programmable money is all about. For those who don't understand, programmable money says the government could give you $1,000 and tell you that it expires in 15 days. And if you don't spend it, it basically goes away. That's the power of CBDCs that I don't think people fully grasp, is that this is programmable money. They can say and set rules. They can say it can only be spent within a 5-mile radius. They can say it can only be spent on a specific brand of it. Everybody gets the point. It's programmable money. So we just, again, need to be careful. I don't mean to be conspiratorial or, fear mongering or anything like that, but it is something that I feel people need to be educated about and understand the capabilities of the technology.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It reminds me a lot of when I see all this new stuff that's coming out. It reminds me a lot of sci-fi films and stuff that I used to watch, where you can literally just like use your eyes and hands to pay for things, and it's all coming very real very quickly. And that's obviously not the route that we want it to go down. We want DeFi, and what its main purpose was always for. So I think the next thing I wanted to touch on, which was something you mentioned briefly in the call, was about DAOs. What do you think about DAOs?
I think DAOs can be great. I mean, you don't have any centralized party, especially just around how the token was distributed. I think is one of the main things. How do you earn your vote into the DAO? Is it weighted towards early investors? Is it weighted towards everyone equally? What sort of things need to be done in order for you to obtain the governance token? For those that don't know, governance tokens is basically how proposals and things get passed on the DAO. Obviously, the DAO also votes to sort of have not an executive board, but some of them have sort of a leadership board. People can rotate in and out of those spots, but there needs to be, obviously, when these things get passed, there needs to be a team of people who execute something, right? Just because a proposal passes doesn't mean that some developer is just going to come out of the woodworks and implement that. There needs to be some sort of team, some sort of structure. I've seen a lot of DAOs do good things like compensate those people, so they'll kind of vote on, okay, this proposal needs to be done. What do we all think is a fair price to have somebody do this for us? And then they sort of go out and implement it through that. I think one of just the really cool things about a DAO is, think of voting anything, homeowners associations, elections, things like that can be transparent on a blockchain, that can't be tampered with, everything like that, to where it's just out in the open and it really gives the power to the people to make the decisions. And if you don't like that DAO or you don't like the decisions they're making, you can go to the next one. So I think having that choice and having an opportunity to have your voice heard, and hold your morality and your opinion strongly, I think is important, because CBDCs, you have one choice. DAOs give you multiple choices. So it's, again, not, and I don't want to say battling, it's contemplating, weighing the pros and cons of both, to sort of understand that a full DAO throughout the world is probably a pipe dream. But if we can have aspects of that to keep CBDCs in check, I think would be the ideal situation.
Yeah, no, 100%. I've always liked the DAO model, and there are a lot of successful DAOs out there that I've seen. One of them being the Bankless DAO. I'm speaking with those guys tomorrow. The way they run everything, educate everything, their schedule, everything's just brilliant. Like, it's a really, really efficiently run system, and they keep everyone up to date. And it's all equal and fair, which is exactly what a DAO should be, and how a democratic system should be. And one of the other things I've really liked seeing come out of regulation is that I think a couple of states now recognise DAOs as legal entities, and some other countries have started to as well. And I think that's eventually the place we need to get to make DeFi successful.
Yeah, I mean, sort of tying the CBDC stuff back into, the masses and normies, whatever we want to call them, people bringing people back into, into this space, I think is all about understanding the different rails that currently exist in traditional finance, right? To implement something like this on top of the existing system, we go back to the sovereign countries aren't just going to give everything over to a DAO. So I think instead of pushing DeFi all or nothing, what we really should focus on is finding a common ground, of finding, okay, if we just implement a DAO here, to just put a little checks and balances in, that there's a way that things get out of control, it can be stopped at that point, before it goes too far. But also understanding that the government is there to protect in certain parts. Can they overreach at times? Yes, but you have sort of that checks and balances there that people, let me give you an example. We all vote, somebody pays millions of dollars to advertise that there's some great congressperson. They get into Congress and they really are just passing things that we just do not agree with anymore. Unfortunately, we voted that person in to be our representative. Now, there should be, and there could be, a DAO that steps in that basically says, we're going to override his vote because he has completely gone against everything we voted to bring him in for. So I think if you had something like that as a checks and balances that says, this guy's going completely against all the nonsense he sold me on TV that he said he was going to do, and now he's not doing any of that, that the DAO could basically step in and say, no, you're not living up to what you said you were going to represent the people. And we all know, everyone who knows the system knows he just said that to get elected. And I think that's just one example of how you could sort of step in with a DAO formation of some kind to say, hey, buddy, you're not sticking to what you sold me on TV.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that comes part and parcel, like you said, about the governance tokens and all that, having that efficient structure set up, allowing everybody to participate and have an equal vote is just really important. And it's something that I really do believe in. So I'm going to move on a bit from there, and talking about obviously all the structural side of things. Let's move back into DeFi for a bit. So what new and upcoming products or protocols have you seen that are really exciting you at the moment?
Really exciting me? Oh gosh, Swapsicle, we're so, heads down building things right now. I like one of the things we launched, Swapsicle Pro, which is decentralized perpetuals trading. So, being able to trade on margin, leverage trade, things like that. But doing it in, your custody, I think is again, really important. That's what Swapsicle's sort of built around, is taking things from the traditional financial world and then giving that product to users to obtain the custody of their own assets. Having things that people can relate to, because again, even though there's a lot of people in DeFi, they've been in for a while, they're telling their friends to come check it out. And then when they get here, it's kind of like, well, I don't know as much as my friend did. So the education stuff, having things that people in the real world, not the real world, but, in real life friends, should we say that, a lot of people have avatars that they can relate to when they come over. I trade on forex.com. I understand that concept. Oh, well, it's the same thing just for crypto assets.
Yeah.
And you do it with your own custody. So things like that. When I talk to people in real life about what I do for a living or anything like that, I just say the days of sending money and it taking 5 days, 4 days, losing transactions, those are over. I'm in an industry that's now looking to move money the way information moves. And I think that's a good starting point, perks people's ears up if they've ever sent money overseas, if they've ever wondered why they can't get paid on a Saturday, things like that. You start kind of hitting those pain points and they go, what's that all about? And kind of pique their interest. And then you say, oh, there's a whole world over here. Come on over. So that's kind of the approach that I take. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's funny because a lot of people I talk to, still the whole idea of crypto just baffles them, and you know, we will get there at some point. But yeah, there's just still a couple of things here and there that need further explaining. But one of the most optimal products for this, I think you're a bit of a fan of. Do you want to talk a little bit about XRP?
Yeah, so some users are going to turn off right now, some will tune in, but I have been an XRP maxi since 2016. I come from a real estate background, and when I was doing my real estate transactions, I would always just the way real estate works, for those who don't understand, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have bought a house before, but you deposit your funds into an escrow account at title. And title then disperses those funds. They wait for the lender's funds to come in, and then everything gets dispersed. Then the house records. And I always thought this is such a pain point. I got people with moving trucks ready to move in. The lender sent the fund. They missed the wire cutoff. And I'm just like, what is going on here? Why can't money move like information? Send an email, boom, it's in your account. It's just digital ledgers, right? Why can't this money move like that? And so I really got in. I got introduced to Bitcoin. And I said, this is kind of cool because you can send it at any time. And then I started learning about how slow it took. And I'm like, okay, well, this really isn't defeating, this is kind of the same issue, right? So I'm like, I need something faster. And then Ripple comes in and XRP, and their whole mission was to basically rebuild the plumbing system, like I talked about, that you can't just come in with DeFi and say, tomorrow, grandma, grandpa, everyone's on DeFi. That's not the way the world transitions into things, right? You need a kind of a middleman, if you will. And love them or hate them, Ripple is that middleman. That's bridging the crypto world with the real world. Are they doing it perfectly the way some DeFi maxis want it done? No, but you have to understand that there's got to be some give and take.
Yeah.
The government and things will never transition to a DAO model for the entire world tomorrow. But how do you get there? You have to build the blocks to then eventually get there. And Ripple they have the funds to fight, the SEC that's attacking the space and trying to bring a little more clarity. So I think a lot of times when people are bashing Ripple and saying, oh, it's a centralized banker's coin and all this and that, why would the bankers be fighting them if it's a banker's centralized crypto coin?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, yes, they do sell banking software, and that's what they do, and they have this asset. But I think if you take a step back, sometimes you can see that they kind of are going to bat a little bit for the industry as a whole. Will they be successful? That's yet to be determined. But they're getting the conversation into the right people to have that conversation, so then you can have DAO conversations, you can have DeFi conversations. So again, love them or hate them. I love them because I've done a ton of research of who they're connected with and the technology behind XRP, and I'd like to see more happening on the chain. And ever since I got into DeFi a little deeper, obviously the XRP ledger doesn't do some of the things that others do. But again, if we judged a fish about how well he can climb a tree, it's sort of that saying. Everybody has their niche. Ethereum does this well, Bitcoin, its store of value, so on and so forth. So everybody kind of has their stuff. Google isn't YouTube, right?
Mm.
Everybody has their thing. And I think Ripple and doing what it's doing for payments, whether they're connected to the bad guys or not, is up for discussion. But I just think as a whole, getting crypto in the conversation is important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think obviously following the XRP lawsuit and all of this kind of stuff, which has been dragging on for a while now, it's funny that when I talk to the majority of family and friends and stuff, the main thing that people seem to have invested in is XRP. And people genuinely do believe in the future of XRP. And it says quite a lot that people decide to choose to invest in XRP over other assets purely because they believe in, what it can do.
Yeah, I think it's the technology and the capability, and it's a pain point, like I said, that people in today's world can relate to. Why can't I get paid in 3 seconds? Why does it cost this much money to send this money? Why can't it happen on a Saturday? the everyday average Joe can relate to that. The average Joe puts their money in a 401k and Wall Street trades it. So DeFi isn't really a pain point for them. Now, crypto became on the scene in 2008, funny enough, when it was a pain point for people, right? When the big 2008 financial meltdown happened, all of a sudden, people's ears perked up. What do you mean there's this other system, right? So I'm not saying a catastrophe needs to happen in order for things to be implemented, but we just have to understand that people need to feel those pain points in order to adopt something. Or, you didn't know you needed a cell phone until everyone had a cell phone, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I can talk to anyone anywhere now, right? So bringing the use case, trying to convince people that want nothing to do with their finance, whatever, I put it in a 401k or I put it in the bank, trying to convince those people that they need to be in DeFi isn't the way. It's to say, hey, look at this cool thing. Look at what you can do in DeFi that you can't do in traditional finance. So you have to kind of pique their interest rather than just yelling at people. You need to take control of your funds. And you start yelling at people like that, they're like, I don't want anything to do with it. It's too confusing. There's numbers and letters in these wallet addresses. And I say all the time, I said, Grandma and Grandpa are never going to be copy and pasting wallet addresses. So we're far away from where we need to be for mass adoption. I think it'll probably be biometrics. A lot of people would probably agree with me. There's people who would say, absolutely not. I'll never put my fingerprint, but you already do it with your phone. Eventually, I'm sure banks will still be around. You go in, they create your keys, you put your finger down, all of a sudden that address is attached to that fingerprint. Away you go. You never see the string. That's how I think eventually it'll be mass adopted.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just following on from that, I genuinely do believe that the next 12 months is going to be a very, very big 12 months for crypto. Obviously, with all the banking issues, obviously all the different collapses we've had in different businesses in the crypto industry. It's a massive 12 months. And I think this will definitely mold the future for DeFi along with legislation as well. I'm sure I could bang on and talk to you all day, Bryan, about DeFi, crypto, and everything that's going on. But we'll call it a day there. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, Bryan, about any DeFi questions, whether it's staking, liquidity pools, anything, how should they reach out to you?
Yeah, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I happen to get the Twitter handle. Believe it or not, this is how early we are. My Twitter handle is @DeFiArizona.
Wow.
So I live in Arizona, and I thought, wow, nobody has this handle yet, so I'm taking it. So it's DeFi Arizona. On Telegram, it's Swapsicle Bryan. Yeah, feel free to reach out in our Discord, Swapsicle as well. You can see all of our links at Swapsicle DEX on Twitter. Our link tree's on there if you guys want to follow and give us a shout and see what we're all about. If not, just stop by, say hey, and we can talk DeFi anytime.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Bryan. Thank you for coming on, and I'll speak to you very soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me on, Tom.